A sharp voice cut through the showroom. "Security! Get her out of here!" The man in the tailored suit smirked, convinced the woman in simple clothes didn't belong. Customers stared, some whispering, some laughing. To him, she was just another face that couldn't possibly afford a car like this. But in less than 10 minutes, his arrogance would shatter. Because the woman he just tried to throw out wasn't a stranger at all. Before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. It was a quiet morning at the dealership. Salesmen polished their ties, cars gleamed under bright lights, and clients with heavy wallets strolled through the glass doors. To most, it looked like just another day of business. But for Naomi Carter, it was something different. She wasn't walking in as the owner, the CEO, or the woman whose name was on every contract. She was walking in as a mystery, dressed in plain clothes, no jewelry, no hint of her position. Naomi had built this dealership chain from the ground up. Years of late nights, hard decisions, and relentless ambition had made it one of the most respected in the city. But behind the polished branding and luxury showrooms, she had heard whispers, stories of how certain clients were treated differently, depending on how they looked. Whispers of employees cutting corners, ignoring complaints, or even humiliating people who didn't fit the part. Naomi wanted to know the truth, and the only way to do that was to walk through those doors as if she were nobody at all. She entered slowly, her sneakers squeaking against the spotless floor. Around her, men in crisp suits sized her up with quick glances, then quickly looked away. She wasn't the type of customer they were eager to serve. Instead, they flocked to others, those who looked wealthy, those who looked like easy commissions. Naomi kept her head down, pretending to study the cars, but inside she was watching everything. The stage was set, though she didn't know it yet. Because in just a few minutes a confrontation would erupt that would expose the very prejudice she suspected and change how everyone in that building looked at her forever. If you were Naomi, walking into your own dealership undercover, how would you feel knowing no one recognized you? Before we continue, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Naomi wandered between the cars, pausing by a sleek black SUV. She ran her hand across the hood, not as a customer, but as someone who knew every detail of its engineering. Still, to the salesman across the room, she was nothing more than a distraction. He glanced at her, frowned, then turned his attention back to a man in a suit browsing by the sports cars. Minutes passed. Not a single employee approached her. Others entered the showroom, each greeted warmly with smiles and firm handshakes, while Naomi stood invisible. She waited, curious how long it would take before anyone acknowledged her. Finally, a tall salesman walked over, but not with kindness. His voice carried just enough irritation to sting. "Can I help you? Or are you just looking?" The words hung in the air, sharp enough for nearby customers to notice. Naomi forced a polite smile, asking a question about financing options, as any customer might. His reply was curt, dismissive, like she wasn't worth his time. It only got worse. When she leaned in to peek inside a luxury sedan, he sighed loudly. "Ma'am, those models aren't really in your range. Maybe try the economy section." Conversations nearby grew quieter. A couple of clients chuckled under their breath, watching the exchange. Naomi's chest tightened, not from embarrassment, but from the confirmation of everything she feared. Her own employees were treating her like an outsider, someone who didn't belong. Then, the breaking point came. A client stepped in, a wealthy man in a tailored suit. He looked Naomi up and down, his expression sour. Without hesitation, he called out to the front desk, "Why is she even here? Get security! People like this don't belong in a place like this." The room shifted. Heads turned. A security guard began walking toward her. Naomi's heart pounded, not in fear, but in anger. She stayed calm, silent, and still. This was it. The moment the mask of the dealership's reputation would fall. What the man didn't know, what none of them realized, was that the woman they were humiliating owned every single car in that building, and in a few minutes, she would remind them all. Would you have walked out in that moment or stayed to see just how far their arrogance would go? The security guard stopped just a few feet from Naomi, his stance firm, his eyes sharp with suspicion. The suited client folded his arms, smirking like he had already won. The salesman who had dismissed her earlier stood to the side, watching smugly as if to say, "See, we knew you didn't belong here." Naomi didn't move. She didn't flinch. She let the silence grow heavier, pressing down on the room until every set of eyes was locked on her. The guard cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Her lips curled into the faintest smile, and then, slowly, she reached into her pocket, not for a wallet, not for an ID, but for a single key card. Black, sleek, embossed with the dealership's logo and her name, Naomi Carter, Chief Executive Officer. Gasps rippled across the room. The smug client blinked, his confidence faltering. The salesman's smirk vanished. Naomi stepped forward, her voice calm but razor-sharp. "Leave? In my dealership? Interesting. Very interesting." She turned her gaze toward the staff, her tone cold now. "I came here today to see how customers are treated, and what I witnessed was prejudice, dismissal, humiliation. Not only toward me, but a reflection of how many others must feel when they walk through these doors." The silence was suffocating. The salesman stammered, trying to apologize. The client muttered something about a misunderstanding. But it was too late. The damage had been done. Naomi had seen everything she needed to see. She raised her hand, pointing directly at the smug salesman and then at the suited client. "You're done here," she said, "effective immediately." The guard shifted uncomfortably, realizing he had almost escorted the owner herself out of her own business. Phones were out now, customers recording. A story was unfolding in real time, one that none of them would ever forget. If you were watching this moment, what do you think happens next? Does Naomi let them walk out in shame, or does she make an example that shakes the entire company? Naomi didn't let the silence linger this time. She turned toward the stunned crowd, her voice steady, but burning with emotion. "This, what you all just witnessed, is exactly why I came undercover. Not for a show, not for drama, but because I knew something was broken here. And today, it revealed itself." The salesman tried to speak, but Naomi raised her hand, silencing him. "You saw me as less because of how I looked. You decided my worth based on my clothes, my skin, my presence. But the truth is, I own this place. And if you can treat me this way, imagine how many others you've dismissed, ignored, or humiliated." The clients who had chuckled earlier shifted uncomfortably, their eyes dropping to the floor. The security guard looked ashamed, realizing how quickly he'd acted on bias instead of fairness. Naomi walked slowly toward the glass doors, not leaving, but making sure every word landed. This dealership was built to serve everyone with dignity, not just the wealthy, not just the ones who looked the part, everyone. And if my staff can't live up to that, they won't have a place here. Murmurs spread through the room. Some customers nodded in quiet respect. Others filmed, already preparing to share the story that would soon go viral. Naomi didn't need to raise her voice. The weight of her words did all the work. By the end of the day, policies were rewritten. Training was mandated. Those who had failed her test were gone. And the employees who remained knew one thing clearly. This wasn't just a dealership. It was a reflection of who they were when no one was watching. Naomi had proven a point far bigger than one incident. She had exposed how deeply prejudice can hide in plain sight. and how quickly it unravels when challenged. The question is, how many times does someone have to be humiliated before the world finally learns? Tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Naomi's shoes that day?